when I was 16, 17 years old, I was working in my local gym for minimum wage. I used to train a guy called Stuart Sapcut, and he had 4 Ferraris. He was running Sapcut, the builders, and he was my first and last ever personal training client. And I was earning £2 an hour at the gym, and Stuart used to pay me £10 for the hour to train, and he used to come twice a week. And he must have got sick of the questions I was asking him, because I just literally was like a sponge. And again, he treated me differently than other people. He was always really kind. He gave me time. He was always very generous. And I learned then, actually, because I think there was this myth that really successful, wealthy people weren't nice people. And he was the first probably really wealthy person I ever met. And he was just so unbelievably kind. So it just and gracious. And again, he'd start training and he'd turn his phone off, and his phone wouldn't get turned back on again until we'd finished. And I had, I was earning £70 a week in a gym, and I had an hour of this guy's time. And I obviously wanted him to get the most out of his workout and do what I could in the time that we had. And, Stuart's like 6'1", 6'2", was kind of quite thin, never used to eat that much, running around very busy. He was never going to be a big guy. But I used to really look forward to those sessions because, again, I was learning a lot. And, when I was 21, he gave me £210 for my birthday, which, remember, was 3 times my salary at the time. So I just said, like, I can't accept that. It's too generous. He insisted I had it, and I spent the money on a car alarm. Actually, I was into my cars at the time, and it paid for my car alarm. And I remember what I learned from that. Again, it was very generous. I mentioned it to someone else in the gym, and I said, "Oh, Stuart gave me some money for my 21st," and they said, "Oh, how much?" So it was £210, like £10 for each year. And do you know what their response was? Can you have a guess? Have a guess what their response was when I told him that this man had given me £210 for my birthday? This was in the 90s, this was.
Because that would have been, with adjusted for sort of inflation, that's what, like £2,000, £3,000?
No, it wouldn't have been that level. But what they actually said was they thought how mean it was that he hadn't given me more because he was so wealthy.
Oh, what fucking...
And that was their response. And I just thought, what was he supposed to give me? Like, 210 million. I mean, it was just, it's just, and I learned something from him. I learned more from someone else's response, where I think he'd been very generous, but the perception was he'd been mean.
God.
And I just thought, what is wrong with people?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, this is another thing I want to talk to you about.
So you got to be very careful, because in terms of actually making money, it definitely creates a lot more problems than it solves. I'll just say that.
Really? What are some of those problems?
Yeah, well, because you can't win. Because the thing is, then, if you take someone for dinner and then you don't pay, you're tight.
Oh, God.
And if you do, you flash.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
What sort of, what are some things some beliefs you had before you made money that when you made money were actually kind of wrong, or you sort of changed your mind about?
I guess the probably when you... And I was, I grew up in quite a poor family, so I used to have free school meals. So I used to get like free school dinners. I think I was the only person in my year that had that green ticket who had free school dinners. And I never got bullied at school, but I probably could have been bullied at school. I know I was quite conscious of the fact that my friends were going and paying for their school dinner, and my parents didn't earn enough to be able to pay for mine. So I decided to just go home for meals at lunchtime and not be in school. I hated school anyway, and I couldn't bear to spend a minute longer than I needed to be there. So I used to literally walk a mile home, spend 10 minutes in the house, and walk a mile back again. It broke the day up, and I didn't have to stand there with that sort of green ticket. So I think, to answer your question, I used to think that having money would solve all these things and solve problems. I remember my parents arguing a lot about money when I was a kid. My mum didn't work. She had osteoporosis. She then did go and get a job. She had to retire early through ill health. And then my dad was a heavy goods vehicle mechanic, and again, just worked 6-7 days a week for just literally no money. So I just remember thinking, like, the money was always the root of the arguments. And I just remember thinking that, I could, if I was wealthy, if I had money, it would solve all these things. And yes, it does, you don't worry about paying your electric bill, but it does cause potential issues with other people. You have to be very careful who you surround yourself
What
with.
problems do you still have that money will never be able to solve?
I think no matter what you do for people, sometimes it's never enough because, you know, if I went and gave £1 million to a charity, for instance, they come back next year and they're asking for 2 million. So it's like, you just, I think enough is never enough sometimes. Like, you have to be careful with that. So I believe, again, that you have to give with a really good heart. So anything I've given away, you know, the past, and I won't go into it, I've done quite a lot in terms of charity. And
Espressos is sponsored by supply chain software gurus Unleashed. It talks to your e-com and accounting software. It's helped Islands cut admin time in half, get granular clarity on your margins, know where your stock is, don't miss availability. Brands like Candy Kittens, Tiny Rebel and Trip all use Unleashed, and so should you.